Before you've even had breakfast tomorrow, your body will already be sending out a signal that decides whether a new skin tag shows up on your neck. Most people think skin tags show up because of jewelry, tight collars, or just getting older. They're not entirely wrong, but they're missing the real driver. Let's get straight into it. The first thing working against you: reaching for your phone the second your eyes open. You've probably heard this one blamed for stress and bad sleep. Here's the piece almost nobody connects to your skin. The moment you start scrolling, emails, messages, whatever's been waiting for you overnight, your brain treats that flood of information as a low-grade emergency, and your adrenal glands respond the way they respond to any emergency. They release cortisol. Part of cortisol's job is to raise the amount of sugar available in your bloodstream, so you have fuel ready for whatever your brain thinks is happening. Some of that rise is supposed to happen. It's called the cortisol awakening response, and it naturally peaks about 30 to 45 minutes after you wake up, regardless of what you do. The problem is stacking artificial stress on top of a rise that was already coming. Now your pancreas has extra glucose to deal with, so it releases more insulin to bring it back down. One morning of this changes nothing. Do it every single morning for years, and you're asking your pancreas to run at a slightly higher output than it needs to day after day for a very long time. And insulin doesn't only tell your cells to store sugar, it's also a growth signal. It tells cells to divide, to build. Keep that thought. We'll come back to it. The second thing: coffee before water. You've gone 7-8 hours without a sip of anything. Your blood is more concentrated first thing in the morning than it will be for the rest of the day. And what does almost everyone reach for the moment they're upright? Not water. Caffeine stacked directly on top of a system that's already running dry and already slightly stressed. Here's the piece specific to skin tags. These things almost always form in the same handful of places: the neck, the armpits, the groin, under the breast, the eyelids. What do all of those spots have in common? They're folds, places where skin sits against skin, warmth collects, and moisture gets trapped. A well-hydrated body simply regulates that environment better than a chronically dehydrated one does. It's a small piece of the puzzle on its own, but it's also one of the easiest things on this entire list to fix. The third thing: never getting actual daylight in that first hour. Your body runs on an internal clock set largely by light hitting your eyes. And one of the things that clock controls, alongside your sleep and your mood, is how sensitive your cells are to insulin throughout the day. There's a large study that tracked light exposure patterns across roughly 85,000 people. Using millions of hours of light sensor data, it found that a person's pattern of light exposure was directly tied to their risk of developing type 2 diabetes, independent of most other factors researchers accounted for. Skip real daylight, and your body simply doesn't get the clear signal that the day has started. You spend the whole day operating in a slightly foggier version of your own metabolism. 10 to 20 minutes of actual daylight in your eyes, no sunglasses, within that first hour. That's the fix. And it costs you nothing. The fourth thing is the one I most want you to actually understand, because it's the piece that ties this whole video together: a high carbohydrate breakfast. Here's what's happening at a cellular level. When your blood sugar spikes from cereal, toast, a muffin, a sweetened coffee, your pancreas releases a burst of insulin to bring it back down. Insulin has a close relative called insulin-like growth factor, or IGF-1, and the two of them share overlapping receptors on the surface of your cells. Where one goes, the other tends to get involved. Dermatology researchers have actually gone looking for this directly inside real skin tag tissue. They took biopsy samples from people with skin tags and compared them to samples from people without. The tag tissue showed significantly higher levels of those exact receptors, the ones insulin and IGF-1 use to tell a cell to grow and divide. That's not a theory sitting in a textbook. That's tissue under a microscope. So picture what a sharp insulin spike is doing morning after morning, year after year, Underneath a skin tag is just a small overgrowth of collagen fibers, tiny blood vessels, and skin cells, essentially your skin building a little too much of itself in one spot. A repeated, sharp growth signal landing again and again on tissue that's already primed to respond to it is exactly the kind of pattern that would produce that. The fifth thing, sitting down the moment you finish eating. After a meal, your muscles are the single best tool you have for clearing glucose out of your bloodstream, and they do it without asking insulin for help at all. When a muscle contracts, it pulls glucose directly out of your blood through a completely separate pathway, like opening a side door that doesn't need insulin's permission to use. There's a well-known study published in a major diabetes journal that took older adults at risk for blood sugar problems and had them take 3 separate 15-minute walks, one after each meal. Those 3 short walks controlled blood sugar over a full 24 hours, just as well as one long 45-minute walk did. It wasn't the total minutes that mattered. It was the timing. A 10 to 15-minute walk right after you eat does more for that glucose spike than the same walk taken at almost any other point in the day. The sixth thing is different from the rest because it's not about insulin at all. It's about the exact spot on your body where you're creating friction every single morning without giving it a second thought. The necklace that sits in the same crease of your neck, the watch or the ring on the same finger, the bra strap or the waistband sitting in the same fold day after day for years. Skin tags love folds and repeated low-grade friction in one exact spot, especially somewhere warm and slightly moist, is one of the most consistent patterns dermatologists see when they map out where these things actually appear on a person's body. So think of it this way. Insulin sets the stage, priming your body's tissue to respond to a growth signal. Friction picks the exact address where that response ends up showing on the outside. The seventh thing is the one that ties everything together, treating new skin tags as purely cosmetic and never once mentioning them to anyone. Here's what the research actually shows. In a 2025 study, people with skin tags were nearly twice as likely to also have diabetes compared with people who had none. And that wasn't a one-off finding. A separate analysis pooling multiple studies together found the same pattern repeat. Skin tags linked to insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome, independent of body weight. Other research has connected them to dyslipidemia, high blood pressure, and elevated inflammation markers tied to cardiovascular risk. To be clear, that doesn't mean one skin tag equals diabetes. It doesn't. Most people with 1 or 2 are completely fine and have nothing to worry about, but multiple tags, especially new ones that keep appearing, especially alongside that darker velvety patch of skin at the neck or underarms we talked about earlier. That specific combination is exactly what dermatologists are trained to notice. Your skin is often the first visible place a pattern shows up that's been quietly building on the inside for a while. Now notice something. Not one of the 7 things we just went through was about genetics alone, or something you did wrong on purpose. Every one of them was about the signal your body was receiving before you'd even left the house. Insulin isn't the enemy here. You need it every single day for your body to function. The only thing that actually matters is how often and how sharply it spikes. So here's the routine, matched 1 for 1 to everything we just covered. 1. No phone for the first 30 minutes. Let your natural cortisol rise do its job without piling extra stress on top of it. 2. Water before caffeine. Rehydrate the system before you stimulate it. 3. 10 to 20 minutes of real daylight in your eyes, no sunglasses, within that first hour. 4. Build your first meal around protein instead of refined carbohydrate. Eggs, Greek yogurt. Whatever actually fits your life, so you're not handing your cells that sharp insulin spike first thing in the morning. 5. A short walk after you eat. Even 10 minutes counts. 6. Take a genuine look at the exact spots where your jewelry, clothing, or accessories sit against your skin every day and give at least one of those spots a break. 7. Stop filing new or multiple skin tags under purely cosmetic. Mention them at your next checkup especially alongside any of the other signs we covered. And here's the part people don't think about. Not everything that looks like a skin tag actually is one. Occasionally, something that looks identical to the eye turns out to be a different kind of growth entirely, one that genuinely needs a proper look under trained eyes before it gets removed. A 2-minute appointment is a much better trade than a home remedy that goes wrong. Tell me in the comments, did any of these 7 surprise you? I'll see you in the next one.